Hello everyone. Welcome to the What If Anime YouTube channel. Today, we're diving into an exciting new story that will take your imagination to the next level. Let's get started. What if Naruto was transformed into fox to ghoul and fall in love with Rise Kamishiro? But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Strange Woman and a Hickey. It was a quiet and simple day in Konoha. Everyone was seen going about their business, meeting relatives or friends, or simply walking about aimlessly. But for a single big-chested Hokage, she was have a really tough time. Not because of paperwork, but rather because of a series of murders that have been happening. According to what the reports stated, all victims, despite the gruesome sight and the horrific state of the bodies, they all shared one thing in common. They all had bite marks. They were eaten to death. Such cannibalistic acts sickened the Hokage, and now they were getting reports of unrest throughout the village's red light district. It always seemed to happen there. But no matter how hard they try, the killer always evaded them like she expected them to come. Like a thief in the night, a shadow in the darkness. But she soon remembered something. Her surrogate son, Naruto Uzumaki, lived close to the red light district. Placing the reports down, Tsunade called for an Anbu to bring Naruto to her. She couldn't bear the thought of having the cycle she had been having repeat itself. Not now, not ever since Naruto seemed to be breaking that cycle. With Naruto, he had been only a few months since he returned to Konoha from his training with Jiraiya. Jiraiya had gone his own way, saying there was some new material about for his new book, and left Naruto to return back to the village alone. Not only that, but the young blonde man had changed beyond imagine. His hair still retained its spikiness but was more longer and slightly more tame. His features were more manly instead of boyish. He lost all baby fat and had the body of an ideal athlete. He was incredible beyond compare. But that wasn't all that changed. Thanks to his training, he developed a more mature response to a lot of things. He even became a bit more cold, calculating. His goofball nature still stayed, but was more docile and tamed. But that wasn't the only thing that has been happening to the poor boy. For well over 1 year, he had been having a strange dream. He kept seeing a woman who was gorgeous beyond imagine. A strange light, and then them fighting together. Them arguing and then making up for their fight on how they were both wrong about what they said to each other. What was this dream? What did it mean? Who was she? What was she? Many questions riddled his mind. But air was one question that really got under his skin. Right before he'd wake from the dream, a voice would say that she and him were destined to be together. And they would bring about a new child. A hybrid child. Shaking his head thinking it was one of those strange fantasy dreams he had, Naruto continued to walking before an Anbu stopped him. Naruto-san, Tsunade-sama wishes to see you, said the Anbu. Not needing to be told twice, Naruto went with the Anbu and Shunshin to Tsunade's office. When he arrived there, he saw Tsunade with her face in a serious scold. Yo, Ba-chan, what up? Asked Naruto, gaining a tick mark from Tsunade. Naruto-san, glad to see you again, said Tsunade, motioning for him to take a seat. When he did, she ordered the Anbu to lock the doors and windows while putting up a silencing jutsu. Ba-chan, what is this? Asked Naruto, looking around only for Tsunade to hand him some documents. Take a look at the documents, said Tsunade in a cold tone. Opening the folder, Naruto looked over the documents only to drop them. What the fuck is this? Snapped Naruto, dropping the documents. It is all legit. These are just a few of the murders that have been happening. And they are close to where you live, said Tsunade, clasping her hands together, intertwining her fingers as she looked on at Naruto and resting her chin on the new mount her fingers made. Who could be doing this? Asked Naruto. We don't know, was the only thing Tsunade said. Can we at least track this person? Asked Naruto, only for Tsunade to shake her head. We tried. Only thing is, the signatures that came up were of ones we know of. It's like the killer was never even there. That's no problem, said Naruto, puffing out his chest. Oh, was all Tsunade said, raising an eyebrow. I'm moving soon, I'll be moving into a two-person apartment away from the red light, have to wait for the current person's letter of confirmation and turning over of ownership," said Naruto only for the no, eyes canceling jutsu to drop and Tsunade grabbing a letter of confirmation. Throwing the signed letter at Naruto, who caught it, she smiled. "Congratulations Naruto-kun, you've officially bought the apartment on behalf of the Hokage. Now grab your shit and move now," hissed Tsunade on the last verse she said. Yeah, I'm going," said Naruto, scratching his head as he walked out the office. Looking at the letter of confirmation, Naruto shook his head as he continued walking. "Sheesh, what is Ba-chan worried about?" growled Naruto, trudging back to his apartment to begin packing. With the killer deep within an alley, the sounds of bone crunching and the sounds of flesh being torn rung through the cool air of the night. But among the horrific sounds, the sounds of a woman moaning and enjoying herself a bit too much echoed through as well. If you peered through the darkness of the night, you could see a woman drenched in blood, her white blouse and purple dress tossed to the side and being one of the only articles of clothes that remained untouched by the bloodbath taking place. And yes, she knew she was gorgeous and used such a tactic to her advantage, seducing men only to feast end them to sat her ever-growing addiction. Bringing her mouth up and licking her lips of the blood that flowed from her mouth, she gazed upon the moon above. "Such a wonderful night for a banquet," she said, her voice as smooth as silk and sultry. No wonder she could seduce men so easily. It wasn't just her body, it was also her voice. With but a single word, she could have men falling all over her at any given moment. Getting up and off her latest meal, she got dressed after cleaning all the blood off her body. She had been doing this for quite some time now. She lost count in truth. Ever since a strange rift opened in her apartment in Tokyo, she had been flung into what seemed like a feudal era of Tokyo. However, there was a slight problem. She was trapped. She had no means of getting back home as the rift closed as soon as it spat her out. Over the days she learned that a select few had something called chakra. She remembered reading somewhere that chakra was a method in which Hindus achieve enlightenment. But here, they weaponized it. These people could use techniques they called jutsu. She never understood it, but man alive, these people tasted way more exquisite than the ones back in Tokyo. What's best about this is she learned that these select few could sense chakra. Thank goodness she didn't possess any chakra, making her the perfect killer. She had taken the lives of so many she lost count. Licking her lips, cleaning the last remnants of the blood on her lips, she exited the alley. Many passerbys merely thought it was a simple romp in the dark and left it at that. A one-night quickie. She had been also timing it. The CCG from her world had been able to arrive at the scene in only 2 minutes. 45 seconds if they push it. But here, they were so slow. Tomorrow investigators would arrive and check the bodies, giving her enough tea time. While they try and track her down, she would be finding her next meal. But one thing really struck her. Apparently in this village they called Konoha, a single man was known as a Jinchuriki, a young man known as Naruto Uzumaki. She didn't know what a Jinchuriki was, but it sure tasted nice. Thinking on what this man looked like, she decided to just buy her time by eating others for now. The following day she'd ask a few people what this Naruto Uzumaki looked like. Next day, it happened yet again. Another body had been found. And much like the rest, they were beyond ruined. A mangled hump of flesh was once more discovered. Many people had gathered about the scene to see the mangled and destroyed body. But through the crowd stood the very culprit. Playing the shocked card, she stared on at the murder laid out on display. Turning away and walking away while biting her finger, she moved through the crowd effortlessly like a snake through grass. Once she was out of sight, she released her finger from her teeth and smiled. Another successful kill, and once again, they were oblivious to the fact that it was her. Their killer right before their eyes, and they were oblivious that it was her. Such a notion sent her on such a high. With her in the clear, she made her way to lay her next trap, which would be hopeful encounter with the village's Jinchuriki. She couldn't wait to find out what he tasted like. Seemed cannibalistic, but she was a ghoul. Ghouls need to feed of the flesh of humans to survive. A basic law of her kind. She had to prepare. She had to begin her preparations for her trap for tonight. A banquet of flesh awaited her when the moon was high and the stars were to bear witness to her endeavors. With Naruto, afternoon, finally getting the last of his luggage into the new apartment, Naruto threw himself onto the couch as a breath of fatigue left his lips. He was beat, carry so much of his stuff to the new apartment, all the way from the red light district through to the new apartment that happened to be in quite the safest areas of the village. There was, one man, was harder than you think. Sometimes he thought as to what he had, but then again, the majority was scrolls, tags and weapons such as kunai and shuriken. He really stocked up on a lot of those. Looking at the ceiling, Naruto raised an eyebrow as he stared at the white paint. A nice two-bedroom apartment. Ba-chan stated it was the only one available. But the one I wanted was further down, said Naruto as a sigh leapt from his lips. Looking to the sink as he listened to the interval drips of water, he shook his head of any thoughts that may surface. But the one thought that stuck to his mind was of YT. Tsunade gave the confirmation letter to him so fast when he was in the process of negotiating. Why is she so worried? I mean, I can handle myself, said Naruto with a slight bit of arrogance in his tone. What had gotten Tsunade so worked up to act like that? Well, no bother lingering on such a thought. I'm starved, said Naruto as he got up and listened to his stomach growl. I'm starved, said Naruto as he checked his wallet. I guess I could have some fine dining just for tonight. With that thought in mind, he stuffed his pocket with his wallet and headed out the door to one of the fancy restaurants there was. The restaurant he'd be having dinner tonight would have to be that new one that just opened. One called 5 Elements, with the killer, sitting at her dresser within the apartment room. Of the middle-class area of this village, she applied her strawberry lipstick and then some purple eyeshadow that really brought out her eyes. She was currently wearing a rather beautiful black dress that came to her mid-shins and was cut down the side to allow more movement and to show off her right leg, ensuring everything was right where it should be, and ensuring she looked like a goddess that had descended to earth. She nodded to her reflection. Excellent, now to find a suitable prey for my palate. I think I'll try that new restaurant. That 5 Elements one that just opened, she said as she grabbed her handbag and headed out her room. With Naruto arriving at the restaurant, he made his booking and took a table for 1. Even though it was a table for 2, they still gave it to him. Ordering some orange juice, Naruto began to scan over the menu. But his thoughts on what to eat were cut short when he heard everyone exclaiming as they looked to the entrance. He too looked up, and when he did, his jaw hit the floor. At the door was what you could call a goddess. Her unblemished face, ruby red lips, deep purple eyes, matching and long flowing purple hair, a pair of red-rimmed glasses pushed up and sat snug on her nose. Her black dress flowing about and showing off her curvaceous leg with every step she took. A black handbag in her hand as she moved through the restaurant. She seemed to be looking for someone, with the way she scanned the building. But her eyes soon landed on a blonde-haired young man who looked to be 17 staring right at her. His face flushed with red as his mouth stood agape at her beauty. Settling for him, she made her way to the table. Naruto spotted this and buried his nose in the menu. Holy shit, she's hot, she's a goddess, and she's walking this way. Maybe she's looking at someone else who is behind me. Yeah, this it, he's behind me and moving this way as it may be the best route, thought Naruto. His heart racing as he kept his nose in the menu. Excuse me, came a voice, smooth and silky, as if every word was from the mouth of an angel. Looking up from the menu, Naruto found the goddess to be right before his table. Smiling to him as he sat there gazing upon her, his knees shaking under the table. His heart racing as he looked on. Excuse me, she asked again, snapping Naruto out of his thoughts. Hi, said Naruto finally. Is this seat taken? She asked, placing a slender hand on the chair. No, not at all. Be my guest, said Naruto, gesturing for her to take the seat. And sit she did, gracefully. She sat down as she tucked some hair behind her ear. Once more, Naruto buried his nose into the menu, his blush growing ever more brighter. Holy shit, she's sitting right before me. This can't be happening. It just can't. This has to be a dream. But if it is, I don't want to wake up, thought Naruto as he stole a glance at her as a waiter came over and placed a menu before her. watching her fingers slide over the menu. Naruto paid careful attention as to how she managed the menu. Her touch looked delicate, as if she was born to high-class living. But his gaze was caught by her as she looked to him. Naruto shot his head back to the menu and cursed his luck. "What can you tell me about yourself?" asked the woman, closing the menu and looking to Naruto. "I don't even know your name and you're already asking me that." BL, blurted Naruto before slamming his mouth shut. The woman just giggled. "I see. Well, my name is Rise. Rise Kamishiro," she introduced. "Oh, well, I'm Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki," said Naruto. "Nice to meet you," said Rise, holding out a hand. Naruto shook the hand and they began to their conversation. He learned that she was a woman who had been living in a country that was not far from here and that she recently arrived here to learn about trading. Naruto unloaded everything on her, but kept the fact that he was a Jinchuriki from her. They talked for hours and hours. But halfway through their talk, Naruto felt that he needed the bathroom. Excusing himself, he made his way to the bathroom. Once he was done with his business, he stared at his reflection. "Holy shit!" exclaimed Naruto in the bathroom. "A woman, a fucking woman, is talking to me. A woman is talking to me. Someone pinch me!" exclaimed Naruto only for his inmate to talk. "Kit, be careful," said Kurama. "Why, it's not like anything bad is going to happen," retorted Naruto. "I sense a hunger from her," said Kurama. "A hunger for what?" asked Naruto, scoffing. "A hunger for you," said Kurama. "Not that kind of hunger," snapped Kurama. "Are you saying she's a cannibal?" asked Naruto, scoffing at how stupid that was. "I don't know yet, but be careful," said the fox, cutting the link. "Baka fox," was all Naruto said before walking out the bathroom and back to Rise. Apologizing for taking so long, they continued. Naruto had lobster while Rise had a salad. But she didn't even take a large bite before she excused herself to go to the bathroom. When she came back, the bill had already been paid for, with the two walking out the restaurant. A rather huge smack to his money, but it was worth it as Rise was now clinging to Naruto's arm. "I'm sorry for doing this, but," trailed Rise as they walked into the night. "I know," said Naruto, smiling to her. "There have been murders happening around the red light district. You never know if the killer could try and come here." "Exactly," said Rise as they moved through a wooded area. But when they reached the middle, Rise came to a stop. Naruto too stopped and turned to her, walking to be in front of her. Naruto looked to her. "You okay?" asked Naruto only for Rise to embrace him. "I'm sorry," she said as she held him tight. Naruto's heart raced as she held him close. The hold she had on him was quite strong. But he didn't mind. He could feel her body pressed against his. It felt amazing, so wonderful, but his hopes of having this woman were dashed when a strange red mist came out of her, with her grip tightening even more. But from the rest mist emerged a strange red tendril-like tail. Inches from his eye, his body paralyzed in fear as he stood rigid. Rise soon moved her face from the crook of his neck, her eyes changing to be red with black sclera, opening her mouth only to clamp it hard onto his shoulder. Naruto cried in pain. But his mouth was silenced when Rise covered his mouth with her hand. Instinct soon kicked in and Naruto began to buck her off, thrashing about as hard as he could as the wound he sustained electrocuted his senses into overdrive and allowing him movement. He managed to throw Rise off him. "I told you to be careful," said Kurama. "Not bad. Your flesh tastes delicious. Can I have another bite?" said Rise. Her persona changed as shish. He licked the blood that dripped out her mouth. "Bitch," was all Naruto said as he glared at her. "Are you a cannibal?" 3 more tendril-like tails emerged out her tailbone, making it a total of 4 as she folded her arms. "Ghoul, not cannibal. Please don't associate my being with those lowlifes," snarled Rise as she got ready to attack. Naruto was having none of it. Tapping into Kurama's power, he went into his 3-tailed state. Rise licked her lips as she looked at the red chakra that coated Naruto's body as he dropped down to resemble a fox while the cloak did resemble a fox. "I'll say this once more. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki of the great Biju Kurama, the Kyuubi no Yoko," said Naruto with Rise licking her lips. "I was hoping to run into you, but for it to be now adds more spice. This will be good. Let me feast upon you. She cooed as she took off in a burst of speed. Naruto too shot off and soon they were engaged in fierce combat. One fighting to keep his life, the other intending to kill. But just as they were about to exchange blows, a powerful light blinded the two as they felt something burning onto their skins. Specifically their necks. Both cried in pain as a bulldo. Lighting shot out from the thing being burned onto their necks and connected to each other. And soon a voice rung through their heads. The bond has been made, it said as they were soon engulfed in a bright light with both fainting from the pain. Rise's tendrils fizzling out of existence with Naruto's chakra cloak fading away. Chapter 2. Why must this happen to me? The two woke up almost simultaneously. Their heads hurting, their throats on fire, their bodies heavy from fatigue. Naruto was the first of the two to wake up, assessing his body only to find nothing broken. The wound he got Rise had healed quite nicely thanks to Kurama, but there was still the burning sensation around his neck. Looking to find a small stream, he peered in the waters and found a strange marking. Like nothing he had ever seen before. It was a full, black solid ring around his neck, as if it were a choker. Or a collar. Looking to find Rise stirring awake, his instincts kicked in and he grabbed a kunai to defend himself. After all, this woman did try to kill him. Rise's eyes fluttered open and she ran hair fingers about her neck. Looking to Naruto finding a kunai in his hand and his face distorted as if he was ready to kill. You seriously think such a puny poker would stop me? She growled as she got up. I will kill you before you touch another innocent person, growled Naruto. Oh please, scoffed Rise. No one's innocent, everyone will kill given the chance. You really think that type of attitude will get you far? And just like that, the ring around their necks glowed a furious red and the two dropped to the ground. The two of them holding their necks in pain as they writhed about, trying to stop the pain being inflicted on their bodies. After a few minutes, the pain vanished and the two breathed a breath of relief at how the pain was no more. Looking to one another, they merely knelt there. No one moved, no one said a single word. It was only after a few minutes that the first of the two spoke. It was Rise. I'm done with this. I'm going home. She hissed as she stormed away. That makes two of us, growled Naruto, heading in the opposite direction as well. But when they got to about 28 to 34 feet from each other, the ring around their necks glowed again, and the pain returned with a vengeance. Both clutched their throats in pain as they dropped to the floor. Rise soon be gone to back away as she struggled to stop the pain in her throat. Naruto was in the same motion as her, but when they were within 10 feet from each other, the pain stopped again. When they got up, they looked to each other with hatred. What did you do? Hissed Rise, glaring at Naruto. I should be asking you that, hissed back Naruto. But as they were about to argue with each other, a blinding light breached their sights. Both covered their eyes as a voice spoke to them, and from the sounds of it, it was a woman's voice. The bond has been made, said the voice. Wait, what bond? What are you talking about? Cried Naruto. You two cannot stray too far from each other, or fight one another with the intent to kill each other, or risk having your souls squeezed to the point of death. You must learn to work together, and perhaps learn from each other, said the voice before the light vanished from their sight. Bringing their hands down, they looked at one another. Purple amethyst gazed upon azure blue. Rise merely scoffed as she looked at Naruto while Naruto kept his eyes trained on the ghoul. I have no interest in helping you at all, but seeing that we have this problem, I have no choice. I certainly don't want to die, said Rise with a snarl. Same here, growled Naruto as they walked over to each other where they were standing at arm distance. For now, we work together, said Rise begrudgingly as a sigh of exasperation escaped her lips. Agreed, barked Naruto. The two walked to Naruto's apartment as they both agreed that would be where they would be staying. Finding the place to be better than her other place, she and Naruto moved to get her stuff from her hotel. Once she was moved in, Naruto threw himself onto his bed in the one room and stared at the ceiling. His hand moving to the mark on his neck as he gritted his teeth. Why must this happen to me? Stated Naruto as his inmate made his presence known. I told you, kid, to be careful around her. But did you listen? No, hissed Kurama. Shut it, Baka Fox. This wasn't planned, hissed Naruto. You should have kept your guard up, added Kurama. Well, she was just so hot. How could I say no to a face like that? Asked Naruto, only for his friend to go silent. But for Rise, she was thinking on the same lines as Naruto. The woman in question was currently in the motions of packing her stuff into drawers and hanging up clothes. Her face racked with hate as she threw her shoes under her hanging clothes. How did it come to this? Why must this happen to me? She hissed as she moved to her bag and grabbed some of her undergarments and moved to a drawer. Her mind kept replaying at what has happened. Why some bright light decided to tie her to some dumbass who was to be her dinner? Why was she in this mess? What did she do to deserve this type of punishment? Deciding to not dwell on it anymore, she grabbed a towel and headed to the shower. Running the water, she gazed at her reflection. The black ring around her neck made for an obvious standout. She hated it already. Why must this happen to me? She said again as she slowly undressed herself. But as she got undressed, Naruto, from his room, decided a shower would do him some good. Getting off the bed with his mind made up, he headed to the bathroom. But when he opened the door, he came to an unbelievable sight. Rise stood in the bathroom, her clothes thrown to the side in the wash basket while her hands were already getting to work on getting her silk peach-colored panties off. They stared at each other, their faces in shock as they were both paralyzed in embarrassment. Rise's face turned red as she began to feel her sense of privacy violated. Her sense of solace had been trampled on, her dignity stolen, and like any woman in this situation, she screamed on the top of her lungs and raised a hand. Naruto's clouded mind couldn't register the incoming threat as his eyes stayed glued to Rise's amazing body. It was only when the deed happened did he realize the side of his face was hurting, and then came the berating from Rise. How dare you, pig, pervert, creep, I hope you die a horrible death, she screamed as she slammed the door in Naruto's face. A hand creeped up to where he was slapped, his face trained forward and his eyes gazing at the white paint of the door. What the fuck, was all he said before moving away from the door. Rise was right now in the shower, her one hand tangled in her hair as she gazed at the tiled wall dripping with water that hit her skin and deflected off. Despite slapping Naruto so hard, she couldn't believe he didn't even register the fact that she slapped him hard. Not only that, but he didn't even attempt to apologize. It was like all functionality had left him when his eyes were fixed on her, and only her. A strange sensation filled her heart as she grabbed some shampoo and brought it up to her hair, her mind recalling the intensity his eyes held as they gazed upon her almost nude form. She had never been looked upon like that in all her years. Many gazed upon her with lecherous and perverse intentions visible in their eyes. But from Naruto, there was not a shred of perverseness within his eyes. It was a sense of admiration, like he admired her beauty, not wanting to monopolize on her beauty. Something she had never seen before until now. Did he really find her attractive? And not in the notion that he had a hot woman for a girlfriend or lover. No, she hissed, punching the tiled wall of the shower. All men are the same. They're scum, every single one of them. Naruto merely sat on the bed, the sound of the shower water running as he caressed the side of his face that had a red handprint on it. It stung a bit, as he pulled the side of his mouth in pain. Damn, she knows how to hit, he said as he rubbed it more. But I will not lie. She is gorgeous. She has an amazing figure about her. One that I've never seen before. Chapter 3. The First Mission. The sun slowly rose over the horizon, golden bands of light splitting the night sky like it was made of nothing as the village of Konoha slowly woke up. Crisp morning air blew through the village as people slowly woke up. But in a particular apartment, a particular purple-haired woman snuggled into her bed. Her groans at how her rest was disturbed echoed through the bedroom. Her groggy eyes slowly open, Ed with the ghoul slowly coming to her senses. Her purple orbs of wonder once more on display as she stretched her tired limbs and climbed out the bed. Today she didn't even know what to do. What was she going to do? She didn't even know what she wanted, not even knowing what she wanted to know. But as she was going over what she was going to do, her mind wandered back to Naruto walking in on her. Her teeth gritted and she slammed an open hand onto the door to her closed. I feel so violated, she hissed. But as she thought on what she was going to do next, her stomach growled. Placing a hand on her empty stomach, she groaned. So hungry. She moaned as she looked through her selection of clothes. Settling for a white blouse with a purple dress, she grabbed a set of low-heeled red shoes and headed out her room to find Naruto already awake. He was currently in the kitchen making some breakfast while a kettle with coffee already in it laid to the side. 2 mugs set out next to the kettle. The smell of eggs and bacon crackled on the pan. "Morning," said Rise rather harshly. "Morning," replied Naruto in a slightly similar tone. Rise poured herself some coffee and drank a sip while Naruto finished up with the plates. Setting the food down before Rise and himself, he looked to the woman he'd probably be living with for the rest of his life. "Listen, about yesterday," said Naruto with Rise looking at him with a cold gaze. "I'm really sorry for walking in on you in the bathroom," he said. "You'd better be. I do not tolerate perverts of any kind," growled Rise. Naruto merely shrugged, while muttering to himself that he wasn't a pervert and dug into his food. Looking to find Rise not eating at all, he became curious. "Why aren't you eating? You still on a diet?" asked Naruto. Rise merely shook her head. "I can't eat this," was all she said. She was a ghoul, for crying out loud. Eating human food is poisonous for her. She could eat it, but she'd have to throw it back up. Unfortunately, Naruto took it the wrong way. "Hey, I know I'm not the best cook there is, but you have to eat something to stay healthy," barked Naruto. "Oh well, if you know so much about me, tell me, why don't you let me feed from you?" "Just a small bite, and are you implying I look skinny to you?" said Rise, glaring at Naruto. "First, touch me, and you die. And secondly, I'm not stating that," hissed Naruto. "I can't eat this because I can't eat this," hissed Rise, making her point. "Why, are you implying I am a bad cook?" growled Naruto. "I never said that." "You did," snapped Rise. "Fuck you," spat Naruto. "Fuck you too," retorted Rise as she went to the bathroom. Slamming the door, Naruto merely looked to the plate that was before Rise. "Not a bite eaten, saying my cooking is bad. I know I'm not the best cook, but I do my best," he growled as he yanked the plate and ate the food. "What's her problem?" he said, swallowing down some egg. "What's his problem?" spat Rise, pacing in the bathroom before stopping at the mirror and running some water. "He doesn't get it. I am a ghoul. Food like that is poisonous to me. I survive on eating human flesh." And just like that, her stomach growled once again. "So hungry," she said before licking her lips, tasting the residual taste of the coffee. The coffee was immensely delicious though. Heading out the bathroom after a few minutes, she found the dishes packed and Naruto getting ready. "Where are you going?" barked Rise. "Mission. Going with Team Kurenai to investigate a few things. Kumo's Jinchuriki has gone missing," said Naruto. "You do realize I am going with," said Rise, pointing at the black ring around her neck. Naruto's own hand moved to the ring around his own neck as he clenched his teeth through a closed mouth. "Damn it. Fine, let's go," huffed Naruto as Rise moved to the door and opened it. Waiting just outside, she watched Naruto lock the door. Once the door was locked, they headed to the Hokage's office. But as they walked along the road to the Hokage's mansion, Rise found many people giving her some rather unwanted looks. Looks like she wasn't supposed to be with a man like him. Looking to Naruto, she found all the color in his face vanish entirely. It was something she had never seen before. In the brief time she had been with him, she always saw him with a smile on his face. But this was of pure ostracized hate. He looked so lonely, so deprived of being recognized. He was recognized, but not in the light he wanted. Her heart slightly sank from seeing him like this. Something inside her wanted to hold him close and whisper to him that it was going to be all right. Wait, why was she feeling this? She hated men. To her, all men were the same, following their desires and primal instincts. Finally making it to the Hokage's office, Naruto knocked on the door. When they heard Tsunade's words, they entered. They were the first to arrive. Good. Naruto had a few things to discuss with Tsunade. Tsunade herself was rather dumbfounded when she looked up from her work and found a rather beautiful woman accompanying Naruto. A smile grew on her face as she began to clap. "Congratulations. Finally found yourself a woman, commented Tsunade only for Naruto to shake his head. Not that simple, said Naruto pointing at the black ring around his neck. Looking closely, Tsunade found that he woman had the same one. Getting up from her seat, she made her way to the two and eyeballed the ring. What is this? She asked. Long story short, this woman was the cause of all those murders. She tried to do it too. Me and then we both were blinded by this strange light. When we came to, another light told us that we were told to work together and or learn from each other, summarized Naruto. So, you were the source for all those gruesome murders, snarled Tsunade glaring at Rise. I was, admitted Rise. Why did you eat your victims? Are you a cannibal? Asked Tsunade only for Rise to growl in rage. Why does everyone think I am a cannibal? I'm more than that crap. I'm a ghoul, something more powerful than a simple person who is addicted to flesh, barked Rise. I see, but eating human flesh is still cannibalism, barked Tsunade sitting back down. Ba-chan, please tell me you can remove this, said Naruto. It was evident that both of them didn't want to be around each other. Even if they were hiding it, their body language showed it. Tsunade merely shook her head. An obvious no. Sorry, Naruto-kun, that can't be removed that easily. Layers upon layers of intricate seals and a binding seal as well. Should I try and remove it? You both will die. Not even the greatest seal master in the world would be able to crack that, said Tsunade with the two sighing and having their hopes dashed. After a few minutes, Team Kurenai arrived at Tsunade's office. Hinata was shocked to see her crush with another woman, which broke her heart immensely. Shino was stoic as ever. Kurenai was slightly impressed that Naruto was able to reel in such a catch while Kiba was drooling over the sight of such a hot woman. Hey there, cutie, hooted Kiba as he moved over to Rise. How about hanging out with me instead of that doby? Try hitting on me, and I will devour you, growled Rise. She could practically smell the arrogance from this guy. Not only that, but the dog next to this guy was a complete turn-off. Rise didn't really like pets, and the animal she hated the most was the dog. Any type of dog from wild to domestic, she hated them. Come on babes, said Kiba arrogantly as he strode up to Rise. I promise you'll enjoy my company. Rise merely gave the man a powerful punch to the ribs, sending him skidding back a few steps as he clutched his chest. What the hell, barked Kiba. Never touch me, next time, you'll be dead, hissed Rise. Clearing her throat, Tsunade went over the mission. According to reports in Kumo, their Jinchuriki of the two tails had gone missing and they were tasked with finding her. Once she was found, they can return her back to Kumo. With the meeting done with, Naruto and Rise went to their apartment to pack their stuff away. Rise never understood it with ninja. EY were no different to the mercenaries from Tokyo or anywhere else in her world for that matter. Once their stuff was packed away, they headed to the gate where they met up with Kurenai and her team. Rise could feel her body running on fumes. She was right now running on fumes. She had not eaten for over 12 hours. She could eat every single person here. Well, nearly every single one of them. Yuto was off the table considering their lives were tied to each other now. Hopefully she could find someone to nibble on before she was completely starved. Hopefully. Chapter 4. Why I do this. Once the things they needed were packed, they massed at the gate and headed off to Kumo. Naruto knew of Kumo thanks to Kurama telling Naruto of his mother's past and how she was kidnapped by Kumo due to her special chakra. Not only that, but their ulterior motive was to also use her as a breeding cow in order to bring about powerful shinobi. Naruto didn't like this, but as being a ninja, you are sent into areas you may not like. And this happened to be one of them. The team walked the long road to Kumo. Hinata kept glancing to Naruto, who was walking side by Rise. Her heart sank due to the close proximity the two had with each other. She didn't understand it at all. Not only did her heart sink, but it was now filling up with jealousy. This was her crush she was talking about. How dare this harlot come in and steal her man? Rise's stomach growled for the 7th time that day. She groaned as she placed a hand on her stomach and felt how empty it was. I could eat an entire house at this point, groaned the ghoul. Maybe you should have eaten the food I prepared for you, growled Naruto. You still going on about that crap? Barked Rise back. I know I may not be the best cook there was, but I know how to cook. The least you could do was fucking eat it. Or have a bite. Growled Naruto. How many times must I drill this into that thick skull of yours? I can't human food due to what I am. Hissed Rise. Oh sure. Blame how you are. Spat Naruto. You're not fucking getting it. Growled Rise, making a hand into a fist. I am not human. No, you're not getting it. I made that food to try and remove the bad blood. Snapped Naruto. And I appreciate the gesture. But I can't eat human food. Shot back Rise. These two were at each other's throats again. How they couldn't just let it go was unbelievable. But on the other side, Naruto really wasn't getting it. For this argument, Rise was in the right. She was a ghoul. Human food could potentially kill a ghoul. Listen, why don't we stop fighting for now? Stated Kurenai, not liking how this was going. Fine by me. The two hissed to each other as they walked along. A little while down the path, they decided to make camp in an inn that was on their road. Naruto and Rise rented a room while Team Kurenai took a room as well. Flopping onto the bed, Naruto looked at the ceiling yet again. A foreign ceiling, he said to himself. But then came the rumbling of Rise's stomach. Looking to find her sitting in a single-seater, he saw her scrunching her face as she rubbed her stomach. So hungry. She groaned in pain. Thinking that he may have misunderstood her, Naruto got off the bed and made his way to her. Rise saw this in the corner of her eye and instantly turned her face to become sour. Watching him flop into the other single-seater, she glared at him. But what he said made her slightly confused and rather made. Mind telling me why you couldn't eat the food I made? Asked Naruto politely. Hey, I'm just trying. To understand why you can't eat the food I made for you. Shot back Naruto. Giving a large breath to calm herself, Rise steadied herself. She also didn't give him the reason why she couldn't eat it. Well, she did, but she was quite vague in her answer as to why she couldn't eat the food he made. If they wanted to have this work, then she'd have to make him understand. But not drop the entire bombshell on him just yet. So for now, she'd give him a bit of information here and there. Do you know what a ghoul is? Asked Rise in a more calmer tone. No, was Naruto's only response. A ghoul is what I am. A type of person that has surpassed human capabilities. We are more faster, stronger and more adept than a human. However, due to being superior to humans, we cannot eat human food. We must feed off their flesh, said Rise with Naruto thinking. And should you eat human food, what happens? Asked Naruto. We may die, was all Rise said. And the reason why you're so hungry is because you haven't eaten human flesh, said Naruto with Rise nodding her head. Taking all the information in like a sponge, Naruto found that this was probably the first step in them working together in this situation thrusted onto them. He felt bad that he didn't realize sooner, so he decided to make it up by doing something he may not really do. Getting up, he took off his jacket and moved the Under Armour collar out the way. Rise looked on in confusion as she stared at Naruto as he did what he did. But she was even more shocked at what he said. Here, take a bite, said Naruto, shocking Rise to the core. She was expecting him to tell her to not do that. But this was even more surprising as she didn't expect Naruto to allow her to feed from him. Smiling, she got up from the seat rather gracefully. I thought you said that I will die if I touch you, stated Rise looking to the blonde. Well, seeing that we have to make this work somehow, may as well do this type of thing. They say trust is the first step in a relationship, was Naruto's reply. I admire your generosity, said Rise as her eyes became her Kakugan. Moving to Naruto, she sunk her teeth into his collarbone and tore a chunk of flesh off from him. Naruto winced in pain as Rise pulled some of his flesh off. Swallowing the 2 mouthfuls worth of flesh, she watched in astonishment as the wound she inflicted completely healed in a matter of seconds. I'm rather surprised that we didn't get shocked or suddenly be in pain, said Rise. That voice said that we will be in pain if we harm each other with the intent to kill in our minds, said Naruto, putting his jacket on. True, said Rise as she moved to the bathroom but stopped in the doorway and looked to Naruto. Thank you for the meal. You're welcome, Rise-san, said Naruto as he smiled to her. Sitting on the single-seater as Rise vanished into the bathroom, he closed his eyes. "That was rather nice of you, Kit," said Kurama within. "I did it to help her," said Naruto. "I noticed, but seeing that she told you something about herself, maybe you should return the favor and tell her something about yourself," suggested the fox. "With the past I have, she's better off not even knowing me," said Naruto, clasping his hands as he remembered what he had been through. "True that," was all Kurama said before going silent. Rise merely looked at her reflection as she ran some water. Sure, she couldn't drink it, but that doesn't mean she can't use it to rinse some of the blood from her mouth. She smiled to herself as she began to recall what Naruto said about trust. "This may just work, but by no means does this mean I trust you fully," she said as she began to wash the blood from the corners of her mouth. But how did his wound heal so damn fast? She had to know. Seeing that trust works on a two-way system, she needed to know something about him. Chapter 5. Welcome to Kumo. A new morning broke through the closed curtains as Rise stirred awake on the bed. Seeing that there was only one bed, Naruto took the couch while Rise got the bed. It was Naruto's choice to be a gentleman. Rise respected that, but she was still hard to him. Simple things like this won't work on her. She was way too tough to be flustered by acts like these. But at least Naruto was trying to make this work for both of them. She admired that about him. But still, she came forward to her situation as a ghoul and explained to him why she can't eat human food and all. She was still surprised that he offered to let her feed from him. It was nice to know that he was willing to become her feeding thrall. Naruto woke up just after her. He stretched his tired limbs as he got into a sitting position on the couch. Looking to find Rise awake as well, Naruto smiled to her. "Morning," said Naruto to her. "Morning," replied Rise, her cold tone slightly softer than the first time she greeted him when they moved in together. It was still a start, but it was a nice start. Slowly but surely, they will come to trust one another. But not right now. Rise took the first shower while Naruto fixed himself something to eat along with him brewing a cup of coffee for himself and Rise. He paid attention to how she drank the coffee the first time but not the food. Must be the only thing she could have. When he heard the shower stop, he poured some coffee for Rise and placed it on the counter. When the door opened after a couple minutes, Rise walked out and sat on a stool and took the mug and sipped some coffee as she watched Naruto make some breakfast for himself. "This coffee doesn't taste that good," said Rise, expecting him to fly off the rails like last time. "It's instant coffee. It never tastes good," said Naruto, finally done with making himself breakfast and sitting on the opposite side of the counter. "I'm rather surprised," said Rise as she took another sip. "How so?" asked Naruto. "Normally where I come from, people are scared and shocked when they come across a ghoul, and use any means necessary to kill us. But you haven't made any attempt to do that. You're rather calm about this," said Rise. "I believe that acting irrationally will only make the situation worse. Besides, even if I did want to hurt you, we'd be shocked beyond imagine," said Naruto, pointing at the ring around his neck. "Fair point," stated Rise as she took another sip of coffee. But after EU sips of coffee and an awkward silence looming over them, Rise sparked up a conversation. "Seeing that yesterday I told something about myself to you, can you tell me about something from your past?" she asked. Naruto froze instantly at what she just said. He knew this was coming, but he didn't expect it to happen so soon. Setting the fork down, he cleaned his mouth and looked to her as he swallowed down the food in his mouth. "You knew this was coming, kid," said Kurama. "I know," replied Naruto. "If I told you about my past, you're better off not knowing me," he stated to her. "Why?" asked Rise. "Are you that broken?" Rise merely chuckled at the last part, only for Naruto to look down in shame. Rise quickly shut her mouth as she saw his reaction. Realizing that she may have struck a nerve, she got to work on making it better. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that," she said in worry. "No, it's fine, you're not far off the mark," said Naruto before giving a small chuckle. "In fact, you're right on point." For once in Naruto's life, he let his mask fall from his face, leaving what he really held beneath the mask. Rise was so stunned as she stared at what she was seeing. Gong was a face of happiness and sunshine, only to be replaced by one of pain and scorn. She had never seen this before. It was like he had seen hell. "I'm truly sorry for saying that," apologized Rise. "Nah, it's fine," said Naruto, putting his mask back on. Rise drank her coffee in silence as Naruto went back to eating, her mind clouded by her sudden regret for prying into Naruto's life. Even though she stated something about herself, that was only to show Naruto that she can only feed of human flesh. But for Naruto, there was nothing within his past to say without it ending badly. It was riddled with past pains and despair. After a couple minutes, they got ready and met with Kurenai and her team and headed to Kumo. For the rest of the way, a powerful silence remained over Naruto and Rise. Team K, Yuri and I talked among each other while the two merely stayed in their fortress of silence. But that was destroyed when Kiba tried to hit on Rise again. "So, baby, what do you think about a romantic date with me after this mission?" he cooed with a smirk. "Not interested," barked Rise. "Ah, come on babes. Don't be that way, you'll enjoy it. Candles and fine dining. Then we go back to my house and dance beneath the sheets," said Kiba, only for Rise to glare daggers at him. "Get this through your thick skull already," growled Rise. "I am not interested. Come on," whined Kiba. "Just one night, I promise you won't regret it." "That's enough, Kiba," hissed Kurenai. Kiba reluctantly stopped his antics as they neared the gate to Kumo. Rise breathed a sigh at how this idiot couldn't get a hint. She didn't enjoy being pestered. In fact, she hated it. Why wouldn't this guy leave her alone? They soon got their investigation underway after meeting with the Raikage. The last known spots where Yuget-Oh was seen was down by her home on the outskirts of the village. So they began their search there. When they reached the place, they began to look about. Kiba used his sense of smell along with Akamaru, while Naruto enlisted the aid of Kurama to sense negative emotions. As they sifted through whatever there was, Rise's nose picked up something. The smell of blood. Seeing Naruto was doing his own investigation, she made her way to him. Tapping his shoulder, she gained his attention. "I smell blood," she said. Following her nose, they made their way along the twisting roads and soon found an overturned manhole. Naruto's face became cold as he remembered what he went through as to how he used the sewer systems for his escape. The countless times he struggled to heal his wounds with Kurama's help. Rise saw his face and instantly took note on how he was upset. According to the Raikage, this was the two-tailed Jinchuriki. So Naruto was obviously relating to the one who was missing. But the face he had made her rather concerned. It was like he was a total different person right now. "Hey," said Rise. Naruto didn't respond. "Hey," called Rise again. Naruto again didn't respond, grabbing him and slamming him against the wall, her Kakugan on view as she scolded him. "What?" barked Naruto. "What yourself? I've tried to get your attention. Why are you like this?" asked Rise. Sighing as Naruto hung his head, he began to recall as to where to start. Finding a spot, he looked into Rise's eyes to find her Kakugan no more. "When I was young, I used the sewer systems to get around. Most of, if not all memories I have, are not pleasant. For me to be down here, reminds me of those memories," said Naruto with Rise releasing her hold on him. "I see," was all Rise said as they went back to following Yugito's scent. When the scent Rise was picking up grew stronger, they came to a rather horrific sight. Nailed to the wall was an arm. Rise's mouth watered while Naruto couldn't help but feel that something was wrong here. What were they after? And why did they take Yugito? Jinchuriki of the Nibi. It didn't sit well with him. Hopefully they'd be able to get to the bottom of this. He just hoped. Seeing Rise looking at the arm with hungry eyes, Naruto sighed as he placed a hand on Rise's shoulder. Rise looked to him with eyes of concern, as if she was overstepping boundaries. "Go on," said Naruto with a smile. Rise's mind didn't even react, and when it did, she was already holding the arm and eating it. Naruto merely stood there as Rise ate the arm, and for some odd reason, he was getting used seeing her do this. Even though it was only a short time since he allowed her to do this. Chapter 6. It has begun. It had been 5 days since they went to investigate the disappearance of the two-tailed Jinchuriki. A dismissed them and Tsunade gave them their pay. 5 days since Rise saw Naruto's face all distorted like it was. It was eating away at her. Why did he pull such a face? What was the connection? She had to know, but she knew that if she asked, she'd be prying old wounds. Some of them probably still fresh. She couldn't do that, but she had to know. What to do? Settling her mind, she got up from her bed in the apartment and made her way to find Naruto in the kitchen with a glass of orange juice in his hands. The glass half empty as Naruto stood there, leaning against the counter. He spotted Rise in the corner of his eye and smiled to her. "Hello, Rise-san, is there something I can do for you?" he asked her. Rise merely shook her head as she took a seat on one of the stools. "I just want to know something about you, and I'm sorry in advance," she said in almost a whisper. "What is it?" asked Naruto, finishing the orange juice and putting the empty glass in the sink. "Why did you have that face when we were in the sewer?" she asked him. Instantly Naruto knew where this was going. And once again, he donned the face he had 5 days ago. Rise never saw him look so deflated. He looked like a completely different person. She felt bad for asking him that. "Are you sure you want to know?" asked Naruto, moving to the counter where Rise was. Rise just nodded, unable to trust her voice. Taking a deep breath, he got ready to lay it all out. He got ready to tell her of his past. "Do you know what a Jinchuriki is?" started Naruto. "Someone who has a beast inside them," answered Rise. "In simple terms, yes, Jinchuriki are human sarcophages, tasked with keeping the monster they hold at bay," said Naruto. "In what way are you a sacrifice?" asked Rise. "Jinchuriki are often looked down on, discriminated for what they hold. Many see them for the monsters they hold actually. On the night of my birth, Kurama, the beast living within me, attacked the village. Many were killed on that night. My father and mother sealed away the beast into me and died then after. Throughout my life I was subjected to many things that would drive someone to madness. I was beaten for no reason. They always stated that I was the son of a demon. But they only saw the monster I hold, and not who I truly am. I was hated. No one gave a shit about me," was all Naruto said. "But sure, Lee, there must have been people who liked you," stated Rise. "A very small amount of people. They were the only ones who liked me. But they were warned that if they try and be with me, they will die. They stayed regardless. I was kicked out of the orphanage when I was 5, forced to fend for myself," said Naruto. Rise merely hung her head. This was what Naruto had been facing his entire life. A life of solace. He never knew the love of a mother and father, the joys of having friends, and the romance of being in a relationship. It was sad actually. Lifting her head, she placed a hand on Naruto's own, her eyes gazing into his own. "You're never alone," she said as she took a breath. "My people, the ghouls, we were hated. During times of crime and murder, we were often the source of hate. People old quickly point at us and tell the cops it was us when it wasn't. I lost many good friends in the blink of an eye. I know the sadness and pain of being alone. But surely you're okay now," stated Naruto. "As a matter of fact, I'm not," said Rise with a half-hearted chuckle. "Deep down, I want someone who understands my pain. I've thrived off the thrills of devouring people, sending my body on such ecstasy. But deep down, I'm burying the pain of what I had been through, watching all that I had removed. The pain of it is too great, so I just bury it by doing those things. You probably think I'm a monster. I wouldn't be surprised. Quote, I don't even think that. Sure in the past, but now that I've gotten to know you, I think you're just misunderstood," was Naruto's only statement, making the ghoul look at him shocked beyond compare. "You really think that?" asked Rise with Naruto nodding his head. "Of course, everything isn't one-sided. There is always two sides to a story," said Naruto with a smile to Rise. Deep down within Rise's heart, she felt something she never thought she had. She admired Naruto for thinking logically and always trying to understand. But this wasn't that. She felt something stronger. It left her feeling warm inside. Like. Her mind soon processed what was happened and her face burned red. Naruto caught this and looked to her with concern. "Rise-san," he called to her, snapping his fingers. "You okay?" Snapping out of her daydreams, Rise looked to Naruto. "Why yeah, just fine," said Rise, getting up and heading to her room. Once inside, she sat on her bed, a hand clasped over her chest as she stared at the floor. This was an entirely new feeling entirely. Something she never felt in her. Something she thought she never even had. Yet here it was. It can't be, she mumbled to herself as a blush crept onto her face. Yet it is. Something seems to be happening to me. Yet it feels good. It feels warm. Looking to the mirror, she smiled to her reflection as the reflection did the same. I think I'm falling in love, she said to herself. But for Naruto, he was currently in his own room as well. Laying on the bed and staring at the ceiling, a hand on his forehead as he just gazed up at the white paint above. Yo, Kurama, you know what this feeling is? Asked Naruto. I'm not sure. Tell me, do you think about her? Asked the Biju within. I do, was Naruto's reply. Is she all that you think about? Pressed the Biju. Yes, replied Naruto. Do you feel like this wasn't a mistake? Concluded the Biju. I do, voiced Naruto. Well kid, my diagnosis is such. You, my friend, are in love, said Kurama with Naruto going beet red. But how is that possible? Chuckled Naruto in a half-hearted laugh. She's a ghoul. She eats people. She doesn't like me, yet I can't help but feel something for her. Like a part of her is crying out to me to hold her close and whisper into her ear that everything will be all right. A drive within me to make her happy regardless of what happens. Congratulations, Kit. You just admitted to being in love with her, said the Biju going to sleep. Merely shaking his head to try and stop the blush, Naruto turned to his side. He did care about Rise and he did want her to be happy beyond anything in life. But he wouldn't go so far as to say he was in love with her. Well, at least not yet anyway. Chapter 7. A first time for everything. A new morning rose over Konoha as once again the village went about their days. That was the ultimate curse of mortality. Wake up, do what you do, go to sleep until you can't anymore. Many woke up and enjoyed their lives to the fullest regardless. But for two people sharing an apartment, it was rather awkward. Naruto was the first to wake up. Rubbing his eyes from the sleep, he yawned as he stretched his limbs awake. Once he was done stretching, he gazed at the closet. The memories of what happened yesterday playing out in his head. His face grew red at what he remembered. How Rise accepted him and all. Shaking his head and telling himself that he wasn't in love. Yet, he got out of bed and began brewing some coffee for himself and Rise. But as the kettle boiled, his mind kept jumping back to what Rise said to him. How she accepted him. Even though a few others did, it felt rather nostalgic. He never felt this before. But his thoughts were broken when the door to Rise's room opened and revealed the ghoul to Naruto. She was wearing a red nightgown as she rubbed her eyes, removing the sleep from them. Watching her move to the kettle and pour some coffee, Naruto went back to making himself some breakfast. A blush slowly creeping onto his face as he watched her sip the coffee as if she was of royalty. Morning, said Naruto to Rise, making her look at him. Morning, replied Rise. A rather long awkward silence loomed overhead as they occupied the kitchen. But at that moment, Rise and Naruto looked to one another. Naruto-san, Rise-san, they said at the same time. You go first, said Rise. No, you go first, said Naruto. Okay, said Rise, clearing her throat. I'm sorry for how I acted to you. I didn't mean to do those things to you. I'm sorry for not understanding your situation. You had every right to be mad at me, replied Naruto with Rise arching an eyebrow. You never cease to intrigue me on how maturely you handle situations, spoke Rise with Naruto chuckling. I do my best, said Naruto with Rise smiling. I can see that, said Rise. And just like that, an awkward silence descended over them. Looking to the ghoul before him, Naruto began to think on the ways to try and show Rise that there was no hostilities between them now. But how? She already knew that whenever she got hungry, she could ask him and he'd allow her to feed. There had to be something. And then it hit them. Rise-san, he said with the ghoul looking at him. Yes, she asked. I was wondering, and I know we've already done that. But I want to ask you, would you be willing to go out on a date with me? Asked Naruto. Rise's eyes widened a bit before she processed what Naruto just said. Was he asking if she'd be willing to go out with him? Even though they already had a date, it was just an act for Rise to bite him. Come to think of it, she hadn't been on a proper date. Ever. She never had been asked out like that before. Many of the men he killed here always tried to see how far they could get to sleeping with such a beauty. But here was a man, asking her out not because of her appeal, but because he wanted to. Smiling as she set her mug down, she looked to Naruto. Very well, said Rise with Naruto smiling to her. No frickin' way, was all Naruto could say. You heard me, let's go on a date, said Rise getting up. Oh, sure let's go, said Naruto as he and Rise left the apartment. Both of them walked the streets of Konoha, their eyes occasionally stealing glances from each other as they walked about. Many of the villagers didn't like such a sight. Some beautiful woman was in the company of the worst man in existence. How did this happen? They wondered. There had to have been some form of foul play here. But for the two, they were in a world of their own. The company they had was amazing. Rise felt at ease with Naruto. How he brought a sense of calmness and well-being with him. For Naruto he felt a sense of completion. Like he had finally found someone that may truly care for him. Not like a friend, but rather, and most likely, a soulmate. Naruto showed her everything in the village. From Ichiraku Ramen to the Hokage Monument. They concluded their date by watching the sunset on the Hokage Mountain. The sun setting was truly amazing. Rise always thought that the sunset back in Tokyo was good, but to see it here made it 10 times better. It made her such at peace with everything around. Looking to Naruto, she blushed along with him when they looked to one another at the same time. This was truly the icebreaker. Sure they'd be stuck like this. Probably forever, but they never would try and do anything to each other in a violent way. In the past it may have been a different story. But now it wasn't. This moment, this singular moment in time, would forever be etched into their minds. Rise-san, said Naruto turning his head to her. Rise too turned her head only to find her face inches from his. A blush swept over her face as they looked at each other. Their breaths felt on each other's lips as they stayed like this. Frozen in time, yes. What is it? Asked Rise, trying to hold it together and slow down her beating heart. I was wondering, have you ever been in a relationship? Asked Naruto. No, was all Rise could say. What is he trying to get at? Was all Rise could think. Well, I was wondering, would you be interested in dating me? Asked Naruto. If you were any other man. No, but seeing that I find you extremely interesting and well-mannered and mature, sure. I'd go out with you again, was Rise's answer. Doing the unthinkable, Naruto inched his face closer to hers. Finding no form of resistance, he moved forward a bit more. Seeing Rise do the same, he ventured forward more and more. The distance between the two becoming smaller and smaller. Stopping just short of each other and them looking at each other just for a split second, they dove forward. And their lips became one. Rise felt like her heart was going to explode. Her heart raced, her body burned as she kissed Naruto. She had never been kissed before, so her virgin lips were claimed by this man she was living with. While Naruto for himself felt like he had gained something that was to never be returned. This was his first ever kiss with a woman. His body felt so energized, like this was fated to happen. He felt sincerity in the kiss, warmth and what could be a small trickle of love. The kiss was only for a few seconds, but it felt like a lifetime to the two. Rise couldn't even believe it herself. An racial love had just been born between the two of them. A ghoul and a human had just begun their relationship to seek love in each other. It was too surreal to even comprehend. Like some guiding hand was leading them to the promised lands. Wow, was all Naruto could say while Rise looked away with red dusting her cheeks. Thinking he did something wrong, Naruto leaned forward and looked to her only for Rise to grab his hand. That felt good, was all Rise said before looking to Naruto. I agree, said Naruto as they went in for another kiss. But this one was filled with more passion than the last one. It felt more better than the last one as they kissed one another. Naruto's one hand got brave and wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer to him as they exchanged saliva. Chapter 8. Moving forward. It had been 3 days since Naruto and Rise started going out. 3 days since the two of them got closer to one another. 3 days since they shared that sweet tender kiss. Of course, that wasn't the last time they kissed. Sometimes stealing a peck on the cheek. Rise did that a few times when she fed off Naruto. Naruto was more than happy to allow her to feed off of him. A small bite of flesh and she was content. Even if it was just 2 mouthfuls worth, she made do for now. Naruto and her even kissed fully on the lips a couple times. From simple peck to passionate make-out, their rate of intimacy was growing and growing. But they both agreed to take it slow. For now, just holding hands, hugging each other passionately and kissing, whichever form it was going to be it. Naruto was perfectly happy with this. He also didn't want to rush into things. So first test the waters to say, and then move up the more their confidence grew. Waking up to a new morning, Rise is wondrous. Eyes fluttered open and the ghoul stretched her tired limbs. Getting out the bed she moved to her shower and spent a few minutes standing under the shower. Sure, the mark on her neck was still there. But to her now, it was a sense to show her attachment to Naruto. She now didn't mind it at all. In fact, she now welcomed it. Climbing out the shower after a few more minutes, Rise dried her long purple hair before looking into the mirror. And that was when she noticed something different with the mark. Last time she remembered, it was a midnight black. The color of it was slowly fading. What did this even mean? Was their situation of not moving too far from each other coming to an end? If that was the case, then she could finally go out and be free. Go shopping with not dragging Naruto along. Go and enjoy the world. Again, not having Naruto along. But even though she found these things alluring, there was one thing she found to really stick out. What was going to happen to them? Were they going to continue this relationship? Would they end it, put it on hold, or choose to continue it? Which one was it? Which choice? Getting out the room after she had gotten dressed, she found Naruto already brewing some coffee while he made himself some instant ramen. Looking to the sudden change in food, Rise raised an eyebrow. What happened to the bacon and eggs? Asked Rise. Forgot to buy some food, was all Naruto said before he heard Rise's stomach growl. Chuckling to himself as he took off his jacket, he motioned for his girlfriend to feed. Rise made her way to him and planted a kiss on his lips before taking some flesh from his neck. Thanking him for the meal, she also found his mark to be fading. Deciding to bring it up, she cleared her throat. This got Naruto's attention with him turning to look at her. Yes, asked Naruto with Rise looking him dead in the eyes. Did you notice the mark we have? She asked pointing to the mark on her neck. I did, replied Naruto. Must be something to how we're working together. Probably, but do you think it is also a case that we may be able to move further away from each other? She added. Kit, said Kurama from within. What is it? Asked Naruto. I've checked the seal, and have come an assumption. The base of it is similar to a binding contract, yet at the same time it works differently. Based off how it works, it ties two people together. However, when they move too far away from one another, then it will attack the person's heart and constrict their heart. Such a tricky thing, said Kurama before clearing his throat. But last night, something happened. The mechanism used to prevent you two from moving away from each other has been removed. So that means we may be able to move far away from one another, stated Naruto. Correct. Better see if it is correct, said Kurama before going back to sleep. You want to see if we can move further away from each other? Asked Naruto with Rise nodding her head. Concluding the breakfast he had, Naruto and Rise walked to the same spot that they fought. The area was large enough for them to do so. Nodding to each other, Naruto and Rise turned to have their backs to each other. And they walked and walked. Coming up to the 30-step mark, they feared the worst. They were worried that they would feel that pain again. But to their amazement, the pain never came. Moving further and further away, they found that they were able to be more than 70 feet from each other. Taking one more step, they felt the sudden pain again. Moving back towards each other, they hugged in happiness and glee each other. It was true, they could finally move further away from each other. This meant that Naruto didn't have to feel embraced when he went into a shop to look at girl stuff with Rise, while Rise herself didn't have to be in such a mood when Naruto went to go and train. This was progress. so much that they celebrated with Rise latching her mouth on Naruto's shoulder and clamping down while Naruto allowed her to feed off him again. He understood why she was happy. Rise was a woman of class. She preferred the high life while Naruto wanted the most out of life. And becoming Hokage would be the best dream he had come true. After all, he and Rise were now girlfriend and boyfriend. Rise would have only the finest. It was his duty to ensure she was well taken care of. No matter what. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.